The day the mask began to crack. The golden sunlight spilled through the tall stained glass windows of Alderwin Palace, painting the marble floors in soft amber tones. From the outside, the palace looked calm, majestic, untouchable. But inside its ancient walls, tension was quietly building, the kind that comes before a storm. Queen Consort Camilla Vailmont sat alone in her private study, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of a polished oak desk. Around her were symbols of success, framed photographs with world leaders, awards from charitable foundations, letters of praise from diplomats. Every object told the same story, a woman admired by the public, respected by the elite, protected by tradition. Yet beneath that flawless image, Camilla felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Fear. She lifted her porcelain teacup, but her hand trembled slightly. The tea rippled inside, betraying her calm exterior. Control, she whispered to herself. Everything can still be controlled. For over 2 decades, Camilla had mastered the art of perfection. She understood how power worked in royal circles, not through force but through narratives. What people believed mattered more than what was true. And she had shaped belief like a sculptor shapes marble. Public speeches were rehearsed. Smiles were measured. Tears were timed. Charity visits were carefully photographed. Every step she took was designed to reinforce one idea. She belonged. But that morning something felt different. Her personal secretary, Elena Hartwell, entered quietly. "Your Majesty," Elena said softly, "the press office is requesting an urgent briefing with you." Camilla's eyes narrowed. "Urgent? About what?" "They've received unusual inquiries from independent investigative reporters. They are asking about archived financial documents and past residence records." The room fell silent. Camilla slowly set her cup down. "How persistent are they?" she asked. "Very," Elena replied. "More than usual." Camilla stood and walked toward the tall mirror on the far wall. She studied her reflection. Flawless makeup, royal posture, the calm expression the world knew so well. But she could see what others could not. Cracks. "Tell the press office to delay any responses," Camilla said. "I want full details. Every question. Every name." Elena hesitated. "There is also another matter." Camilla turned sharply. "What?" "The Crown Office informed us that Prince Willard has requested a private meeting with you this afternoon." For a moment, Camilla felt her heartbeat echo in her ears. Prince Willard Aurelius, the heir to the throne, was not easily shaken. Calm, strategic, disciplined, much like his late mother, the former queen. His public image was controlled, but privately he was known for one dangerous trait. He hated dishonesty. "When?" Camilla asked. 3 o'clock. Camilla nodded. "Very well." After Elena left, Camilla closed the door and locked it. She leaned against the desk and closed her eyes. She had always known this day might come. Not today specifically, but someday. Long ago, before the palace, before the crown, before the cameras, Camilla had made decisions that helped her rise. Some were clever. Some were necessary. Some were morally flexible. She had told herself it was survival. Everyone in power does what is necessary, she believed. Yet now, those buried choices were rising back to the surface. Across the city, in the eastern wing of Crown Tower, Prince Willard stood before a panoramic window overlooking Alderwin's capital. The streets below buzzed with life, unaware that something historic was unfolding above them. Behind him, his chief advisor Marcus Hale placed a thick folder on the table. "This arrived this morning," Marcus said quietly. "From an anonymous source." Willard did not turn around. "Anonymous sources are dangerous." "This one included verified documents," Marcus replied. "Bank transfers. Property ownership trails. Old communication logs. Everything cross-checked." Willard finally turned. His face remained calm, but his eyes told a different story. "Does it involve her?" Willard asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Highness." "Queen Consort Camilla." Willard exhaled through his nose, almost amused. "Of course it does." He walked to the table and opened the folder. Pages of evidence stared back at him. Hidden assets. Private offshore accounts. Conflicting timelines. Signed agreements with media intermediaries. And something that made his jaw tighten. A property purchased secretly under shell corporations. A residence never disclosed to royal financial oversight committees. "This isn't just personal misconduct," Willard said. "This threatens institutional credibility." Marcus nodded. "If the press publishes this, it won't just damage her," Willard finished. "It will damage the crown. For several seconds, silence filled the room. Then, unexpectedly, Willard let out a short laugh. Marcus looked confused. "Your Highness." Willard shook his head slowly, still staring at the documents. "The irony," he said. "All these years of speeches about transparency. About moral leadership. About honesty." Another quiet laugh escaped him, not joyful but stunned. "She built an empire of appearances," he said. "And now it's collapsing under paperwork." Marcus hesitated. "How do you want to proceed?" Willard closed the folder carefully. "I want to hear her explanation directly," he said. "No intermediaries. No palace filters." 3 o'clock, Marcus added. She confirmed the meeting. Willard nodded. "Good." At exactly 2:57 p.m., Camilla arrived at Crown Tower. The palace guards opened the doors with formal bows. Everything appeared normal. But Camilla could feel it, the shift in atmosphere. Staff members avoided eye contact. Conversation stopped when she passed. Power senses when it is weakening. She was escorted to Willard's private office. The doors closed behind her with a soft but heavy click. Willard stood by the window, his back facing her. "Thank you for coming, Camilla," he said calmly. She forced a polite smile. "Of course, Willard. You sounded concerned." He turned slowly. There was no anger on his face. Only disappointment mixed with something unexpected. Amusement. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair. Camilla sat, crossing her legs gracefully, maintaining royal posture. "What is this about?" she asked. Willard walked to his desk and opened the folder. "Tell me," he said, "how many versions of the truth do you keep?" Camilla's breath caught. "I don't understand," she replied. He slid the first document across the desk. "Then help me understand this." Her eyes scanned the page. Her heart sank. He continued placing documents down, one after another. "Hidden assets," Willard said calmly. "Unregistered property ownership. Confidential payments to private intermediaries. False public disclosures." Camilla's lips parted slightly. She looked up. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough," Willard replied. "And the press?" she asked. "They already know enough," he said. "They contacted my office this morning." Camilla felt something inside her collapse. Years of control. Years of manipulation. Years of perfect presentation. All unraveling in one room. "I can explain," she said quickly. "Some of these actions were misunderstood. Others were protective measures. The royal system is not simple." Willard raised his hand. "Stop," he said calmly. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her. "You know what's fascinating?" he said. "What?" Camilla asked nervously. "You spent decades controlling the narrative," Willard said. "But you forgot something simple." "What?" she whispered. "The truth doesn't need public relations." For a moment, neither spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Willard laughed. Not loudly. Not mockingly. But with disbelief. A quiet laugh that echoed in the room. Camilla stared at him, stunned. "You're laughing?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "I'm laughing at how fragile false power really is," he said. "One leak. One document. And the entire illusion shakes." He stood up. "This isn't personal revenge, Camilla," he said. "This is institutional survival." She swallowed hard. "What happens now?" she asked. Willard looked at her directly. "Now," he said, "you face the consequences of building a kingdom on half-truths." Outside the tower, journalists were already gathering. Social media whispers were beginning. The storm had started. And Camilla finally understood. The crown she fought so hard to wear might soon become too heavy to hold. The leak that shook the kingdom. The first alert appeared at 6:12 p.m. A single notification on thousands of phones across the kingdom of Alderwin. Breaking. Confidential royal financial documents leak online. Within minutes, the capital erupted. News stations interrupted evening broadcasts. Social media timelines flooded with screenshots, speculation, and outrage. Hashtags trended at lightning speed. Commentators argued. Supporters defended. Critics attacked. And at the center of it all was one name. Queen Consort Camilla Vailmont. Inside Alderwin Palace, emergency bells rang softly through the private corridors, not audible to the public, but known by staff as the signal for crisis protocol. Camilla sat alone in her private chamber, staring at the television mounted on the wall. A news anchor spoke with controlled urgency. Documents allegedly tied to royal financial oversight reveal undisclosed properties and questionable transactions connected to the queen consort. While the palace has not yet released an official statement, pressure is mounting. Camera's reflection stared back at her from the dark screen edges. This was no longer private, no longer manageable, no longer quiet. Elena rushed into the room holding a tablet. Your Majesty, it's spreading faster than we predicted. Independent journalists have released partial document sets. More leaks are expected overnight. Camera closed her eyes. How much damage? She asked. Elena hesitated. Public sentiment is turning. The comments, they're not kind. Camera stood abruptly. They never are when people feel betrayed, she snapped. She paced across the room, heels clicking sharply against marble. Get the communications team. Now. Minutes later, Camera sat at a long conference table surrounded by advisors, legal consultants, image managers and palace spokespersons. Charts filled the screens. Social sentiment graphs dipped dramatically. Media headlines stacked across the display. The lead strategist, Victor Rain, spoke first. We must respond quickly. Silence will be interpreted as guilt. What do you suggest? Camera asked coldly. Victor inhaled carefully. Controlled admission. Partial acknowledgement. Emphasize misunderstanding. Frame the issue as administrative oversight rather than deception. Camera folded her arms. And the property? Victor hesitated. That's the hardest part. It contradicts previous public disclosures. Camera's eyes sharpened. Then reframe the narrative, she said firmly. Humanize it. Emotional context. People forgive emotion. One of the legal advisors interrupted. With respect, Your Majesty, this is no longer just a public relations matter. If parliamentary oversight committees become involved, it becomes institutional. Camera slammed her hand on the table. I will not be dragged through public humiliation, she said. I built this image with my own blood and sacrifice. Silence fell. Elena spoke softly. Prince Willard has requested an emergency council meeting. Camera froze. Now, she asked. Yes. With senior royal advisors and the king. Her throat tightened. This was no longer about reputation. This was about power. In the Crown Council chamber, Prince Willard sat at the head of the long oval table. His posture was calm, his expression controlled. Across from him sat King Aurelius IV, aging but still commanding. Beside them were senior ministers, advisors, and palace officials. Screens displayed live news feeds. The king broke the silence. This situation is unacceptable, he said firmly. The monarchy survives on trust. Willard nodded. Which is exactly why hiding it would be worse, he said. One advisor interjected. We should issue a denial immediately. Willard shook his head. The evidence is already verified. Denial will only deepen public outrage. The king looked at his son carefully. What are you suggesting? Willard leaned forward. Transparency, he said. Full investigation. Independent review. Temporary suspension of Camera's public duties. A murmur spread around the table. That would be unprecedented, someone whispered. Willard remained calm. So was the scale of this deception. The king sighed deeply. Call her in. Camera entered the council chamber moments later. She walked with grace, but her shoulders felt heavy. Every eye in the room turned toward her. She met Willard's gaze first. He did not look angry. He looked resolved. Camera, the king said gently but firmly. Sit. She took her seat. The room was thick with tension. Willard spoke. The public already knows enough to damage institutional credibility. We must act. Camera clenched her hands beneath the table. I have served this crown loyally, she said. Every decision I made was to protect stability. Willard raised an eyebrow. By hiding financial assets? By shielding private matters from public exploitation, Camera snapped. You don't understand the pressure of living under constant scrutiny. Willard remained calm. I understand something else, he said. That leadership means accountability. Silence. Then the king spoke. Until a full independent review is completed, Camera, you will step back from all public duties. Camera's breath caught. What? She whispered. This is temporary, the king said. But necessary. Her chest tightened. Years of status. Ceremonies. Power. Visibility. All slipping. She turned to Willard. This is what you wanted? She asked quietly. He looked at her directly. No, he said. This is what the truth demanded. Outside the palace gates, crowds gathered. Some shouted in anger. Some defended Camilla. Some simply watched history unfold. Inside Camille's private chambers that night, she stood alone by the window. For the first time in decades, there were no cameras, no advisors, no applause, only silence. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Camilla, a familiar voice said. Her blood ran cold. Lena, she whispered. Lena Ashcroft. The one person who knew everything. The keeper of her oldest secrets. I warned you years ago, Lena said calmly. You can't bury truth forever. Camilla closed her eyes. What do you want? She asked. I want freedom, Lena replied. And I want to stop running. The call ended. Camilla slowly lowered the phone. She understood something terrifying. The leaks weren't finished. The real story hadn't even begun. Across the palace, Willard stood alone on the balcony watching the city lights flicker. Marcus joined him. You're becoming very popular with the public, Marcus said. Willard smiled faintly. Popularity fades, he replied. Integrity doesn't. Marcus hesitated. Do you feel bad for her? Willard paused. I feel sad, he said quietly. But not guilty. He looked toward the horizon. This isn't about destroying someone, he said. It's about rebuilding something better. The kingdom of Alderwyn stood on the edge of transformation. And the next chapter would test everyone. The confession that changed everything. Morning arrived with heavy clouds hanging over Alderwyn like a warning. The city woke up tense. Newspapers printed emergency editions. Talk shows argued non-stop. Social media burned with theories, anger, and sympathy. Some demanded Camille's permanent removal. Others accused the palace of internal betrayal. But inside the royal walls, something much deeper was happening. Camilla had not slept. She sat in her private dressing room, staring at herself in the mirror. Dark circles framed her eyes. Her usual confidence was gone. The woman reflected back at her looked tired, older, human. For the first time in years there was no schedule. No cameras. No applause waiting outside the door. Only silence. Her phone buzzed again. Lena Ashcroft. Camilla hesitated, then answered. Meet me, Lena said. Today. Before the press finds me. Camilla swallowed hard. Where? The old Riverside Library. Noon. The line went dead. Camilla stared at the mirror. This was the moment she had avoided for decades. The moment when the past finally demanded attention. The Riverside Library was abandoned years ago, forgotten by the city, hidden behind ivy-covered walls and cracked stone pillars. Camilla arrived alone, wearing a simple coat and sunglasses. No guards. No royal escort. Just a woman carrying too many secrets. Inside, dust floated through the sunlight. Old wooden shelves stood empty. Broken windows allowed cold air to pass through. Lena stood near the far wall. She looked older too. But stronger. Calmer. You came, Lena said. I had no choice, Camilla replied quietly. They stood facing each other, two women tied together by history. You should have told the truth years ago, Lena said. We both know it. Camilla looked away. I was afraid, she whispered. Once you start lying, stopping feels impossible. Lena crossed her arms. And now? Camilla's voice trembled. Now everything is collapsing. Lena stepped closer. The journalists already contacted me, she said. I haven't spoken yet. Camilla's heart pounded. What do you want? She asked. I want you to stop hiding, Lena said firmly. Not for the palace. Not for the crown. For yourself. Tears filled Camilla's eyes. I don't know how, she said. Yes, you do, Lena replied. You just never allowed yourself to be weak. Silence filled the old building. Finally, Camilla nodded slowly. Will you stand with me? She asked. Lena hesitated. Only if you tell the whole truth. Camilla closed her eyes. For the first time in decades. She agreed. At Crown Tower, Prince Willard received urgent news. Marcus rushed into his office. She's gone off palace grounds without escort, Marcus said. We lost tracking 15 minutes ago. Willard stood sharply. Find her, he ordered. Quietly. Minutes later a second call came. She's with Lena Ashcroft, Marcus said. At the old Riverside Library. Willard exhaled slowly. So it begins, he whispered. That evening, Camilla requested something unexpected. A live public broadcast. Not through the palace media office. Not pre-scripted. Not filtered. A direct address. The king was shocked. Are you sure? He asked. Camilla nodded. I can't fix lies with more performance, she said. Willard watched her closely. For the first time, he saw fear. But also something else. Courage. Millions of people across Alderwin tuned in. The broadcast began. Camilla stood alone behind a simple podium. No crown. No royal decorations. Just a woman and a microphone. She took a deep breath. My people, she began, voice shaking slightly. For many years I stood before you wearing titles, honors, and carefully shaped words. She paused. But tonight, I stand before you without armor. Silence filled living rooms across the kingdom. I built an image of perfection, Camilla said. And behind it I hid my mistakes, my ambitions, and my fear of losing everything. Her voice cracked. I approved financial decisions that should have been disclosed. I allowed narratives that were incomplete. I protected my reputation more than I protected honesty. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I told myself it was for stability, for the crown. But the truth is, she swallowed, it was for me. Gasps echoed in newsrooms. Social media froze. She continued, I cannot undo the past, but I can stop running from it. She looked directly into the camera. I accept responsibility. The broadcast ended. No dramatic music. No palace statement. Just silence. Inside Crown Tower, Willard stood watching the screen. Marcus whispered. That was unexpected. Willard nodded slowly. She finally chose truth over control. For a moment, Willard laughed softly again, not in disbelief this time, but in quiet respect. The public reaction was explosive. Some praised her honesty. Some remained angry. But something shifted. The conversation changed. From scandal to accountability. From gossip to reform. Later that night, Willard requested to see Camilla. She entered his office quietly. They stood in silence for several seconds. You surprised me, Willard said finally. I surprised myself, Camilla replied. He studied her. You could have fought, he said. You chose confession instead. She nodded. I was tired of pretending. Willard leaned against the desk. You understand this doesn't erase consequences, he said. I don't expect forgiveness, Camilla replied. Only honesty. Willard smiled faintly. For the first time. I believe you. Outside the palace, crowds stood watching screens replay the broadcast. Some cried. Some argued. Some simply stared. The kingdom of Alderwin had just witnessed something rare. A royal admitting fault. And the story was far from over. Because confession was only the beginning. The real transformation was coming next. The fall that built a new legacy. The morning after Camilla's confession, the kingdom of Alderwin woke up different. Not louder. Not calmer. Just heavier. The air felt thick with reality. News headlines no longer screamed scandal. Instead, they asked uncomfortable questions. What should accountability look like in modern royalty? Can power exist without transparency? Is this the beginning of a new monarchy? Inside Crown Tower, Prince Willard stood before a massive whiteboard filled with reform proposals, institutional reviews, and public policy recommendations. For the first time in generations, the monarchy was not reacting. It was evolving. Marcus entered with updated reports. Public trust is stabilizing, he said. Not fully restored, but shifting. Willard nodded. Good. That means people are paying attention. Marcus hesitated. Camilla has officially stepped down from ceremonial authority. She asked to remove herself from all advisory privileges. Willard paused. She didn't have to do that, he said quietly. But she did, Marcus replied. Camilla now lived in a small residence on the edge of palace grounds. No royal staff. No daily briefings. No procession. Just silence and simplicity. She woke up early, made her own tea, and walked alone in the gardens. For years she had feared losing power. But now that it was gone, she felt strangely lighter. One afternoon, she volunteered quietly at a local literacy center under her real name, not her royal title. The coordinator didn't recognize her. Thank you for helping, the woman said warmly. Camilla smiled. For the first time, she whispered to herself, I am not performing. Children gathered around her as she read stories aloud. Not for cameras. Not for headlines. Just presence. She felt something unfamiliar in her chest. Meanwhile, Willard faced resistance. Senior nobles pushed back. This is destabilizing tradition, one council member argued. Willard remained calm. Tradition should evolve or it becomes fragile, he replied. He proposed sweeping reforms. Independent financial oversight. Transparent public reporting. Reduced royal privileges. Ethical accountability boards. Limited royal immunity. Some advisors warned him. You're weakening your own future authority. Willard smiled. No, he said. I'm strengthening public trust. One evening, Willard visited Camilla unexpectedly. She was surprised to see him at her door. You don't have guards? She asked. I wanted to come as a person, he replied. They sat outside, watching sunset colors stretch across the sky. You lost everything, Willard said. Status, influence, protection. Camilla nodded. But I gained something I never had, she said softly. What? He asked. Myself. Willard studied her. You know the public still judges you, he said. I deserve it, she replied. But I don't need applause anymore. He smiled faintly. That's growth. She looked at him. You changed the monarchy, she said. No, Willard replied. You forced it to change. They sat in silence. Not enemies. Not allies. Just two people shaped by the same storm. Weeks passed. Reforms were implemented. Public hearings were broadcast. The royal institution became more transparent than ever before. Young citizens started seeing monarchy differently. Not as untouchable rulers, but accountable servants. And something unexpected happened. Public trust slowly began to rise again. Not because of perfection, but because of honesty. One day Camilla received a letter. From a young girl. Read. I saw you on TV when you said sorry. My parents taught me that brave people admit mistakes. Thank you for showing that grown-ups can learn too. Camilla cried quietly. This time not from fear, but from meaning. At Crown Tower, Willard prepared his national address. Marcus asked him, Do you regret pushing so hard? Willard shook his head. No. Power that refuses to change eventually collapses. He stepped onto the broadcast stage. My people, he began, the monarchy is not a symbol of superiority. It is a responsibility. He paused. We are not perfect, but we choose to be better. The nation listened and believed. That night, Camilla stood outside her small home, watching fireworks over the Capitol, celebrating the Kingdom Reform Act. She smiled softly. She was no longer queen consort, but she was finally honest. And that honesty built something greater than titles. It built legacy. The laughter that marked a new beginning. 1 year later, the kingdom of Alderwin stood brighter. Not because scandals were forgotten, but because lessons were remembered. The royal unity ceremony was being held in the Grand Square, a public event unlike any before. No golden carriages. No excessive luxury. No artificial grandeur. Instead, simple stages. Open seating. Citizens standing side by side with officials. This ceremony was not about power. It was about renewal. Prince Willard, now officially crowned King Willard I, stood behind the podium, dressed in minimal ceremonial attire. The crown rested lightly on his head, symbolic, not dominating. Behind the stage, Camilla stood quietly among volunteers. No royal title. No spotlight. Just a name badge that read, Camilla Valemont, Community Literacy Program. She watched the crowd gather. Families, students, workers, elderly citizens. People who once criticized her, now simply coexisted. She did not seek their approval. She only hoped her past mistakes had helped shape something better. The ceremony began. King Willard stepped forward. My people, he said, voice steady, 1 year ago this kingdom faced its greatest test, not from war or famine, but from truth. He paused. Truth challenged our pride, our traditions, our comfort. He looked toward the crowd. But it also rebuilt us. Applause rose. He continued. We learned that leadership is not perfection. It is responsibility. Then something unexpected happened. King Willard smiled. Not formally. Not politically. But genuinely. And suddenly he laughed. Not loudly. Not mockingly. But warmly. The crowd grew quiet. This laughter, he said, still smiling, is not disrespect. It is relief. People leaned forward. For years we carried the weight of pretending. Today, we finally breathe. The square erupted into applause. Camilla felt tears form. That laughter echoed the same sound she had heard in his office long ago, but now it meant something different. Not disbelief. Not irony. Freedom. After the ceremony, King Willard walked off stage and approached Camilla. Guards stepped back. Advisors paused. He stood before her. Thank you, he said. For what? She asked softly. For choosing honesty when you could have chosen defense, he replied. She nodded. I didn't do it for the crown, she said. I did it for myself. He smiled. That's why it worked. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was an official letter. An invitation. What is this? She asked. An advisory role, Willard said. Not political. Not powerful. Educational Ethics Board. Teaching future leaders about transparency. Camilla looked up shocked. You trust me? She asked. He nodded. Not because of who you were, but because of who you became. She smiled through tears. I accept. Later that evening, Camilla returned to her small home. She placed the letter on the table. She sat down and reflected. Years ago she chased power. Now purpose found her. She realized something important. Her fall did not destroy her. It rebuilt her. Across the city, King Willard stood on the palace balcony watching citizens celebrate. Marcus joined him. You changed history, Marcus said. Willard shook his head. No, he replied. We changed it together. He looked toward the city lights. The strongest crown, he said quietly, is one that listens. Camilla stood by her window watching the same lights. She whispered to herself. I was never meant to be perfect. I was meant to be real. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. Final message. Sometimes lies build towers. But truth builds foundations. Power fades. Titles disappear. But integrity lasts. And sometimes, it only takes one honest moment, one brave confession, and one unexpected laugh to change an entire kingdom.